I happen to be a videographer, that's my business. So I do video production, I do a lot of conferences, I do my own debates, I tape, and whatever I do for classes or anything, I make sure that I get a video recording of it, because not only to review my own explanations of atheism and secularism and humanism and all that stuff. So I'm going to leave these up here for anybody who wants to write these books down later on. They're all books against superstition. How many people here believe in the supernatural, meaning that something outside the laws of physics? Okay, about half and half. Okay, that's fine. What was that? Questions come after my little 10-minute thing, and so just remember that. But is it about supernatural?
Would you count aliens?
No, because an alien could be totally natural. Now, if an alien came down here and started to move this bottle around, that would be supernatural alien. So I'm a science guy, so I know a little bit about science, aliens, Einstein's theory of relativity, kind of on a lower end. So before I start, I just need to know a little bit about you guys. How many people here are Christian? Okay. How many people here are atheist? Okay. How many people here are humanist? How many people don't know what a humanist is? Okay. So how many people believe in superstitions? We had about 4 or 5 over here. Supernatural, that is, right? Okay, that means things outside the laws of physics, right? Okay, so I'm an atheist. I've been an atheist pretty much all my life. I was one of those people that when I was 12 years old, from no type of influence from my family or friends, I went to church and I said, this just does not make any sense at all. And I'm sure that a lot of people were out there around the age of reason, 8 to 12 years old, and just said, again, just from their own mind, no reading, no influence from anybody, they just didn't get it. And I didn't get it. So I was a curious guy from the very beginning. And then about 15 years ago, I had a small, very small, much smaller book than this that I read that had all the evil parts of the Bible. And so I couldn't believe these evil parts were in here, so I actually got one of the Bibles that I had, dusted it off, and sure enough, it was absolutely true. So there's a problem about the problem of evil in the Bible and among other religions as well. So that's why I'm right now an educated atheist, which means that I probably know more about the Bible than most Christians do. I probably know more about the Torah than, well, that's another case. Jews are more educated, but I know definitely more about the Bible than the average Christian guy. A humanist is something that I identify with as well. You don't have to call yourself an atheist to be an atheist. A humanist is a growing movement in the country that wants to improve the human condition. That's their main phrase. And what that means is that you want to improve it not by praying to a supernatural, but by doing something to make the world a better place. Everybody eventually finds a way to make the world a better place, either with your friends or your family or your community or your city or your county or your state or the country, in very rare instances like Bill Gates, the entire world. Bill Gates puts billions of dollars worth of help to not only improve the human condition, but make sure that people can improve themselves as well by using technology mostly. I'm probably the only guy among all the religious speakers that you've had that don't believe in the supernatural. I don't believe in superstitions. I'm it. If you're a humanist, or an atheist, or a scientific skeptic, that's one of those guys that just say, what, a ghost? Oh, I had a camera and look at this orb there. Oh, well, is it more likely a supernatural orb floating around that you can't see it, even with your camera? Except for your camera, that is. Or is it more likely a piece of dust on your camera lens? This is where the scientific skepticism comes in. So I'm an atheist, I'm a humanist, and I'm a scientific skeptic. A scientific skeptic says, prove it to me. Show me the data that something is real. And these are the people that dive into things like vaccines. You know, this whole thing about vaccines cause autism. Have you guys heard about that at all? Okay, that's kind of like the latest news, especially here. Mission Viejo has the greatest outbreak of measles in the country because there's a lot of Christian young earth creationists. Anybody know what a young earth creationist is? Creationist, okay?
The belief that the Earth is only around 6,000 years
6,000 years old, not the 4.6 billion, that's right, which most scientists pretty much can prove in every type of format there is, and radiometry, radiometric dating, where you get the radioisotopes from different chemicals and elements from rocks, and you can find out how old they are. So the scientific skeptics is a group of people who want to question a particular claim, like vaccines cause autism, or other things like Bigfoot. Does Bigfoot exist? Well, if Bigfoot, what?
Do you think he does?
No, I pretty much know he doesn't. I can't say. Knowledge is a whole other thing I'd like to touch on later on. Knowledge versus belief. That's one thing that you really kind of have to define within yourself, because some people say, I believe in God so much that I know God exists. And nobody knows that God exists. Everybody's an agnostic, because it's impossible to know God exists when there's more than 100 religions out there, and each one has a different definition of God. So if you're arrogant enough to say, I know God exists, fine. But if you talk to the person, you talk about the basics of philosophy and define knowledge and belief, almost everybody will finally say, okay, I believe very strongly. He's in my heart. I feel him in my soul. But I don't really know he exists. That's what it comes down to. So knowledge is substantiated evidence and proof that something exists. Vaccines do not cause autism. There is no evidence after 17 studies in the last 12 years that vaccines cause autism. So that's what the scientific skeptic is about. So, but coming back to the, I'm the only guy who doesn't believe in a religion, that's where everybody should start off with, I believe. Even if you're a believer now, you should kind of backtrack a little bit. And you know what the null hypothesis is? That means a starting position. That means there's so many different religions out there. The best way to know which one is true is to start off without believing in any of them. And then you can kind of dive into each one and find out, okay, this has this, okay, this one has kind of a similar thing over here. You'll find out that every claim that Jesus made in the Bible was actually made by other religions beforehand, every single one, which is like, wow. I thought Jesus was the only guy who rose from the dead. Nope, sorry, all these other guys rose from the dead. So they kind of put a little bit of knowledge and attain that doubt. In fact, the more doubtful you feel about your own beliefs, the more likely you're going to find out what is really true. And the null position, meaning to start off with believing nothing, is the best way. I'll give you an example. Suppose that everybody here had no experience with religion. They didn't have anybody say anything to them. They lived in a family that didn't read any religious books. They didn't know about churches or synagogues or mosques. Nothing. You were totally ignorant of religion. Remember, ignorance doesn't mean you're stupid. It just means you don't know. And then somebody came and said, look, this guy was in a fish for 3 days, and this other guy rose from the dead, and this other guy rose from the dead. And all the different stories from all the different religions, and you were just there, what? You see what I'm talking about, the null position here? If somebody comes to you, and if you're not indoctrinated in any religion and tells you the basic story of any of these religions, including Buddhism, I think Buddhism's kind of cool because they're nonviolent, but they have their own superstitions. What? My soul goes into an ant when I die? You know, that to me just is a belief, and I respect the belief, but I don't have to, I respect people believing whatever they want to, but I don't necessarily have to respect or agree on a belief. So this is kind of a separate thing. You respect other people's belief. I totally respect that anybody believe whatever they want to. But I don't have to respect the belief, especially if it causes harm. And when you see the harm caused by certain religions, it starts turning you away from the religions. Just look up, everybody got a pen? First thing to write down, look up humanist on Wikipedia. Grab a piece of paper, humanist. Next thing to do, website, whatstheharm.net. It's a website that shows what religions can do to people and other things can do to people. Religion is actually just like 20% of this whole website. And it's all about believing different weird things and how people can hurt themselves unknowing that this particular thing that they believe is hurting themselves. An example would be acupressure or acupuncture. Does everybody know what acupuncture is? How many people have actually been to an acupuncturist? Did it work? It didn't work. It doesn't work. It's a placebo effect. Does anybody not know what a placebo effect is? Placebo effect is something that you take that's a sugar pill that supposedly the doctor says, take this and it'll make you feel better. And it does nothing, but it makes you feel better. Same thing with the placebos that cost $5 versus $1. If you take a pill that's $5, it's going to do a lot better for you as a placebo than a pill that's only $1 or free. Same thing with the beer. How many people haven't drunk beer here? Okay, that's my kind of crowd. A beer tastes better in a bottle than a can. Same beer. Why? Because a bottle has weight to it. Makes it feel heavier, makes it feel stockier.
Is that the same thing for soda?
Wow, that's a good question about that. I don't know, but I've studied. The one thing about scientific skepticism, we want to know the truth about why we think the way we do. So we read these studies, and the studies usually are not 10 people, not 100 people, probably 500 or more people. That was an acupuncture study in Europe that was 5,000 people. Very, very interesting study. Turns out acupuncture doesn't work. It feels like it works because you're in a nice, calm area in an office that has background music playing, might have some incense, music is calming, the doctor comes in, says, can I help you? Whatever he does, it's going to feel better. But
when they put the needles in your back?
Anywhere. They put the needles anywhere. The study in Europe was 3 different groups, a real acupuncturist. They wanted to prove acupuncturist works, so they were full on with the study. Another group was acupuncturists that used wooden needles that didn't break the skin, so they said this part wouldn't work themselves. And the last part was actors, dressed up like doctors, poking you with real needles anywhere damn they wanted to. So if you're a masochist, that would be a great job to have, poking people. Anyway, oh, you have a headache? How about here? How about here? It'd be fun with it. What group did actually better? The real doctors with metal needles, the real doctors with the fake needles, the fake doctors with real needles. Which one did better? Anybody have a clue?
Probably the first one.
They all did the
First
same.
one, real doctors.
They all did the same.
No.
By overwhelming amount, the fake doctors did the best. Because they were much more personable. The real doctors were kind of more clinical. But if acupuncture were true, this is the scientific skeptic, the atheism thing I'm talking about, it would be overwhelmingly 50%, 80%, 100% better than these other 2 groups. No, acupuncture doesn't work. It might feel good for you, and several friends of mine that are scientific skeptics go there because it just feels good. That's kind of like what religion is. If you have a reward, if you have an end game that is better than where you're at right now, and you're promised that end game, heaven, you're going to believe. I mean, it's just natural, I'm in a shit life right now. I can't wait to get to heaven. I'll just live my life and believe in Jesus and off I go, right? In fact, Hitler could be in heaven right now if he accepted Jesus on his deathbed. This is kind of one of those weird oxymoronical, silly things that a lot of religions have. They still give you this escape clause. If God was real, he might be real. I'm not a total agnostic or atheist asshole and saying I know there's no God. I'm a skeptic. I don't know. Nobody knows. There could be something like a God, but if there was a real God, would you think that he would communicate better? He wrote a book in a language that's extinct, Aramaic. You would think that he might be responsible for that. One of these issues about why I don't believe in a God. The more you want an idea, and this is anything, the more you want an idea to work, the less likely you're less likely to find out if it really is working. This is called confirmation bias. Has everybody heard of confirmation bias? It's like all science fiction movies are awesome. Go see Alien Covenant. Okay, it was all right, but it wasn't awesome, right? Because there was all these scientific things in it. So this confirmation bias, every one of us has. And the more, this is especially good for this group right here, because rebels question authority. So question yourself as your own authority. That's what scientific skeptics do and atheists do. We could be wrong. How often have you heard a religion say, I'm right, I gotta be right, because if I'm wrong, I might not go to heaven. Isn't that a little self-serving? A little narcissistic, meaning selfish, a little leading into a particular cause because you're getting a heaven that nobody has ever produced evidence of? Even the, what is it called, the near-death experiences. Has anybody had a family member see the light when they were dying and come back from it? Or they had a heart attack and died, heart stopped, they was brought back to life? That happens in everybody. Atheists, Buddhists, Jews, religionists. It happens to everybody once in a while. About 20% of near-death experiences have this deoxygenating thing where you just start seeing a white light. I'm almost ready for the Q&A because I really want to get to that, and I think that that's more entertaining for you guys. Just a couple other points. Faith is not a pathway to truth and knowledge. Faith actually admits believing in something that has no evidence. Look it up in the Bible. Look it up in Wikipedia. Faith is something that you simply feel good about believing. I need more. I need more. I hope that everybody wants more. Because if you believe in a faith that does harm, in a way that you don't see that does harm, you're much more likely to do harm if you believe in a religion that believes in some pretty weird crap. I'm not going to get into the details, but even Christianity. Look up the website I mentioned. So faith is not a pathway to truth and truth and knowledge. What would you say is a pathway to truth and knowledge?
Well, like you said, skepticism.
Yes, but what would you do to start gaining more truth and more knowledge?
We philosophize.
Philosophy? Look at philosophy, right? They kind of define those things, but that doesn't mean what you would do. That's a good starting point.
Use hard science instead of pseudoscience.
That's right. He said, this guy's, I could tell he's a scientific skeptic right off the bat, even though he might not know what it is, because he said the word pseudoscience. That's something that, how many people have seen this? Science proves that coffee, or chocolate or coffee, once a day coffee reduces cancer. And then the next year, coffee, promotes cancer. One day, 1 cup a day. It's the pseudoscience that we look at as scientific skeptics. Here's another thing to write down, and that is Snopes, S-N-O-P-E-S. If you hear a story like that, Snopes is part of the scientific community, and they dive deep into the origins of some rumors or some ideas that you might come across. This is pretty cool because a friend of mine, I ride motorcycles, I ride a Harley. I've been riding for 20 years. I ride all over the place. Me and my wife and I. And we were out at this, out by the Air Force Base out on the 14. It's Edwards Air Force Base, right? Mm-hmm. It's where they displayed the 117, F-117 fighter. And we were out there at a cat house. The cat house is a feline conservation center, and we go to different places. It's pretty cool to see tigers 3 feet away from you. I mean, growling away. It's awesome, and it's $6, so I recommend going there. Everybody going there. It's called the Rosamond Feline Conservation Center. Great day trip out in the poppies out there in the fields. And if you want to get away, that's a cheap way to go. And this guy came up to me and said, "Did you hear that the birds are dying because they're flying over solar cells, solar arrays?" And I'm going, "Really? I'll look at that." So I looked up Snopes. And I didn't really say, "I don't believe it." I said, "I doubt it." Because solar arrays are black. They take light in, they don't reflect light. So, but how many have been out to Vegas where they have that big solar cell out there with the big 3 lights out there, in the desert there? It's salt. They melt salt and use it to turn a turbine and heat water to turn a turbine. Yeah, birds going through 1,000 times the energy of the sun rays coming through the normal air, yeah, they're going to burn up, but not solar cells. And occasionally they'll dive into solar cells thinking that it's water. This is something I didn't know. So knowledge is good, right? Knowledge is good right here for all the different things that you're getting along. But all these other things outside school, where are you going to know? Where are you going to go to find out if something is true? If a guy comes up and says, hey, man, birds, the solar cells are no good for birds. How many people here know I'm putting solar up on my house like this morning? The guys were there installing it. My wife and I finally pulled the trigger on that one. We're like, our electricity rates are humongous because we have an edit studio, we have a workshop, we have a guest house, vacation rental stuff there, so we have a big bill. How many people think that the electrical, this is totally off base, by the way, totally off base. The electrical solar cell companies are going wild in California. How much of a percentage of the entire electrical producing things, including one nuclear plant in Rialto, and the gas plants, and the oil plants, and the coal, well, there's no coal in California, and the solar, how much do you think is solar of the whole amount?
In America, right?
No, California only.
Oh, California. Less than 20%?
Any guess? Most people don't care, don't give a shit, all right? 2%? It used to be.
I heard we were asking people to buy it, we have so much. Paying people to take our silver.
Well, you're
I
educated.
haven't gone to Snowbird.
You probably listened to the same podcast I did, Science Friday. That's another thing you want to write down. Podcast, Science Friday, good stuff. You can choose on the issues that you want. 40% is solar, and you are correct. We are asking other states to buy our electricity, and if they don't buy it, we have to give it away because with production, you can't just cut it off somewhere. You have to give it somewhere. The power is there, and you have to give it away because.
Why can't we do more if we're doing?
What was that?
Why can't we do more than 40%?
Well, we can and we are, because everybody's now buying solar because you get like half off your electricity for 10 years. Then after that, your electricity is free.
Oh, so once people start doing what you're doing, then we can take care of that.
Well, there's going to be more production. Electricity is growing, so it's always good to have excess anyway.
Oh,
But industry takes, a good 50% of the electricity.
yeah.
They're electricity hogs. They need electricity. And actually, it's kind of weird because here are all these consumer solar cells now powering the industry, which is like never would have thought about that before. Okay, last thing here. Science is the best way to know what's true. That's pretty much it. If you want to get involved in science, I had a friend of mine that was a young earth creationist, the guy that believed in every literal word of the Bible. They're called literalists, or sometimes textists. There's constitutional textists as well that believe that the Constitution, word for word, Scalia, the guy, Supreme Court justice who died last year, was one of those. He believed that people wrote 200 years ago exactly what we should do now. Not. Things change, ideas change. So he was a conservative judge. So science is a really good way to find out. So if you're interested in getting anything into science, it's pretty darn cool because your knowledge base is growing incrementally every week, every day, every month. But at the end of several years, it's pretty cool to know something in one particular area. So I'm a science guy. I'm just a science nerd. I'm not a scientist. I'm a video producer, and then I also have a scientific skeptic in Los Angeles that I started earlier this year. So now it's fun time. Q&A. One at a time. You've already talked, so I need another person to talk before you talk again. That's kind of the way it goes. And thank you for raising your hand. That's good.
I have 2 questions.
2 questions? Okay.
One, would you recommend any atheist or most atheists to read the Bible?
Do I recommend any atheist to read the Bible?
Yes.
Actually, the other way around. I would recommend the Christians to read their own Bible. Because what happens is most Christians, yeah, I chuckle at it too. It's like, what the fuck? Right, excuse me. Because most Christians don't read the Bible. Hell, I know more about the Bible than most Christians do. They don't read the evil parts. Here's the next one, evilbible.com. Did I already tell you about that? No? Evilbible.com. And whenever you want to talk to a Christian and you don't believe, you don't really have to argue with them. You could just say, the reason I'm an atheist is, or a non-believer or agnostic, whatever you want to say, is because I've read evilbible.com, and it's all about the Bible. And here's another one. This is the big one. The Skeptic's Annotated Bible. Look how handsome that is. Great. I love it. Great. Most of the time I do this. I put little post-it notes because I want to go back. This stuff, I have a kind of a clue that if I put a star next to it, it's pretty good. Underline it, or then if I put a post-it there, it's like, okay, this is important stuff here. These books lead you to more different ideas for you to decide what you want to believe. It also gains your knowledge, because some things are knowledgeable no matter what you believe. Your knowledge is gained. The Skeptic's Annotated Bible will take a particular verse and say, well, wait a second, there's a contradiction here. You can see God. Nope, can't see God. 2,500 of those in the Bible. That's why I don't believe in the Bible. Plus, I don't believe in slavery. Does anybody here believe in slavery?
Not at all.
Okay. Why didn't God put something in there that said, okay, this is good for this time period, but later on we're going to be a more civilized society and slavery is going to be undeniably false or unconstitutional or wrong? Immoral, thank you. All that stuff. So there's a lot of things that God would have said. If the Bible would have said something like, in the future there's going to be this great energy source, and it's going to be called EMC2. Anybody recognize that? E equals MC squared. But it's just that little thing, EMC2. Right in the Bible. In Aramaic or Greek, doesn't matter, would say the same thing. Most of the Bible, Old Testament's Aramaic, most of the New Testament's Greek. Most of the people who supposedly wrote the Bible didn't know how to read or write. Other people, it wasn't Mark, Luke, Matthew, and John, it was other people. And most biblical scholars agree with that. But something like that, like, awesome, EMC2, that would have done it. Something in there, something. I just don't see it. You get why I'm passionate about this, is because at first I couldn't believe it, and then I started diving into it, and my last vestige of the superstitious belief was a soul. How many believe that we have a soul, a supernatural soul that leaves us when we die? 1, 2, 3. Is that a yes? Is that right on? Okay, 3, 4, maybe. An agnostic. Boy, it's only been 20 minutes and you're already an agnostic? All right.
No, I don't know if this would count as atheist. I have a specific way of thinking.
Mm-hmm.
It's more like I don't think I have the right to say whether something is or isn't there.
Of course you do. You have an opinion. You have the right for an opinion.
I can sit here and say, if I die, I'd like to give credit to whatever may or may not be there. If I die and there's nothing there, kudos to you, I gave credit to it. If I die, there's 20,000 gods, there you go. I don't really have...
You're hedging your bets is what you're doing. It's like, okay, if there is a God out there, I'll give you credit. Sorry, for most gods, that doesn't cut it, by the way,
I know. I'm just saying, I don't really have much of a right in myself as to say whether something is or is not there.
Right, but you can find out different ways to lean to one side or the other side. If you talk to a evangelical Christian, no matter what great argument you have against religion in general, and then specifically their religion, and specifically their God, they're always going to give you an apologetic answer. An apologetic is a defense of the belief. Greek stuff. They have a confirmation bias. Some people call it an echo chamber, where they have a vested interest in getting to where they think they are going to go without knowing that it's real. So you might be hedging your bets a little bit, and it's okay to be an agnostic. Remember, I think everybody's agnostic when you get down to it. Because I get to these, I go to debate Christians and they say, the nature of God is this. Nobody knows the nature of God. God is a immaterial, non-energetic mind. Okay, something out, if you imagine space is void of everything except a couple atoms here within a cubic meter, right? 3 or 4 atoms is the average for space in a cubic meter. And something in there has the power to move other atoms and stuff. Sorry, I cut you off right there, you know. It's like, you believe something's there. Oh, wait, science hasn't discovered it yet. Science hasn't discovered yet, so that's that little tiny, the part. Has anybody heard of the Large Hadron Collider in Switzerland and France?
Mm-hmm.
It's underground about a mile, or I don't know, half a mile or something. It's the biggest scientific instrument, most expensive science instrument in all time. 1/3 of the world's physicists live within 10 miles of CERN. That's the name of it. It produces 200 million collisions of atoms every second. And they take those photographs and they put them through a computer and they say, give me something that looks weird. 200 million collisions a second. And not one collision after 8 years of running almost nonstop. There was a blow up about 6 years ago on it. Not one experiment has proven some whiz-bang element that just goes off. Holy shit, what is that, the scientists would say. 200 million a second. And not one, God could put something in there if he wanted to that says, I'm just going to give these scientists a little fun. Whoop, 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 right? And they would take this photograph and say, we have a new particle. And they try to discover, and they have no clue what it is. That's science. That's part of the science thing, leaning toward there is no supernatural. There is no star. I use this a lot. There is no star that disappears and travels faster than the speed of light, which is impossible, by the way, even with wormholes. And it goes across the sky and ends up the next night over here 100 million light years away. It would take normally 100 million light years for a photon to go from here to here. And we can notice it's the same star because the heat signature and the signature of the star's colors. That would be totally awesome. And scientists would flip out, right? That's a supernatural. God is up there. He could do anything. He could prove it to me, an ardent atheist, that he exists, and he doesn't. He shouldn't even be wasting his time with the Christians they are to believe. He should be spending time with me and the scientific skeptics saying, come on, Bruce, you know, you just have to pray. Well, prayer doesn't work. For the Christians that are there that says prayer doesn't work, that says prayer works, it works anecdotally. I prayed for 10 things and I got 3 of them. Coincidence, maybe? But the biggest thing is prayer is that, and I'm not harping on Christians, I'm harping on anybody who believes in the supernatural. Something out there affecting us. Doesn't have to be called God. That can read our minds and do something out there, right? Just wacko stuff as far as I'm concerned. If any religion had the right God, that God would be answering their prayers more. I'll give you an example. You walk into a hospital and you're Mormon. You happen to just be talking to the nurse there or the receptionist. Oh, you're Mormon, the receptionist says. They get out of here in 30% faster time than anyone else. And you look at the statistics, and across the world, Mormons get out faster than anyone else statistically from hospitals. If you're in trouble in the hospital, everyone that you know is praying for you, right? That's the one time in your life you're probably going to get more prayers versus your deathbed than any time else. Is that right? And you get out equally, depending on the medical facility, is equal. You get out the same as any other religion gets out. This is proof that prayers don't work. That's a coincidence.
It also depends on your situation that you're in, like the medical situation you are in.
No, if you have a medical situation equivalent to other people's medical situation, and the medical care all across the world is the same in the hospitals, or similar. You go to England, for instance, or Saudi Arabia, they have great hospitals. You get out the same. If you go to Istanbul, maybe not so much. Maybe the hospitals there aren't that great. But if you go into a particular hospital with a particular situation and equate those with all the other people with the exact same diagnosis, with the very similar medical care, everybody gets out equally. Some people don't get out, they die. Some people get well, some people remain sick, all equally.
Because there's been a study about this, you're saying.
There's been 59 prayer studies in the last 42 years. I've not read all of them, but I know of all of them. them. And you can look up prayer study if you want. This is a big deal for Christians because it's like, this is absolute proof that prayer doesn't work, even though not Christians, for everybody that believes in the supernatural, because it's something that it's in them. They feel it. They feel it. This is called anecdotal feelings. Anecdotal meaning that it's only you. It's only you that feels it. I know that Jesus exists because I felt him in my presence. What the hell does that really mean? It just means that you get a tingling thing in your brain that tells you something is happening in your brain. That's totally natural, not supernatural. Anecdotal evidence is the worst thing that anyone can do to prove something is true. I had an experience when I was 16 when I know what it's called now. It's a scientific evidence, but man, I was scared shitless. I woke up and I felt like 100 pounds was on my chest. My eyes were open and I could not move. And it scared me like crazy. 2 minutes, my dad's a doctor, I didn't mention it to him. It scared me like crazy. 2 years ago, it's partial paralysis because your body produces a drug that paralyzes you. So when you have a dream about running, you don't kick the person you're next to or wake up the person you're next to. It's something that's embedded in us where it paralyzes you. Most people don't know this. And that drug kind of, if you're awake suddenly and you still have this drug, actually when you wake slowly sometimes, I was waking slowly, and you're paralyzed still. This is the drug that your brain produces. Among the 200 other drugs that make you feel things. You have 200 different type of drugs that make you feel. You have dopamine, you have serotonin, you have oxytocin. Those are the three big pleasure drugs. Serotonin is the drug that makes you feel less pain. Look at this. When I was putting this on, I felt the serotonin. Oh man, what's that drug? Well, it's serotonin. And isn't that a wonderful thing? In fact, I get pleasure out of talking, right? So occasionally I get a little woo in my brain. And I know it's not a spirit. It's dopamine, not artificially produced by myself, because I'm getting pleasure out of talking to other people about something that I think is worthwhile. I don't care if anybody goes straight to atheism or not. I want to let people know about how an atheist thinks. And maybe they can take part of that and use it in their everyday life outside of their religion. That would be even good. Scientific skepticism is the way I do it. Well, so this is the questions?
Yeah, those were the questions that were generated by the request, so.
Okay.
If
I'll
you wanna
go through
take-
this pretty quick, but
Sometimes people are too shy to raise their hand.
well, this is some pretty good stuff, because remember, this is the one guy that doesn't believe in superstitions or supernatural. So,
Has
It's-
anything
go ahead.
ever happened to you? Is that why you
that
don't?
sounds.
No, it has like.
Oh.
Have you never had a supernatural experience?
Oh, of course. When I was a kid, I had some things that could be explained as something that my brain was feeling for me. Remember, your brain is just a marvelous evolutionary machine with 10 trillion brains, 100 billion brain cells, and each one of those brain cells can attach to as many as 1,000 other brain cells with synapses. So you have 10 trillion synapses. It's basically a super, super complex machine, but it's chemical. There's deterministic behavior, deterministic action going on. When you feel something, it's not you just feeling it out of your soul, it's your brain producing something, and if you get a brain aneurysm and part of your brain goes out, it affects your body. That's why I don't believe in a soul, because a soul should be independent of matter. It should be totally mental. I do believe in respecting somebody's life when they die, but there is no soul.
Where do you think people go then?
They don't.
They
We're
don't
worm
go
food.
anywhere?
We're worm food. And see, that's if you are a believer, that's totally non-negotiable. Because what's my purpose in life then? Well, I could tell you the purpose in life pretty easily from a philosophical standpoint. It's a used car. That's your purpose. The story is this. When you have a used car and the car finally blows an engine, its purpose is done. But for that time that it was working, even as badly it was working, it has a purpose. And then it has another purpose because it's going to go to Japan and come back as a toaster. Your life has your own purpose. Your purpose is your own responsibility to decide. You can be an asshole. You could be a great scientist. You could be an average guy. Pretty simple. There is no thing to look forward to afterward. This life is it. Our sun's going to blow up in 5 billion years and swallow the earth. Sure, my life here is insignificant, except for right now. Right now, my wife loves me. My family loves me. I contribute to society. I'm trying to make society better through humanism, through doing the right thing, not only on a personal, moralistic basis, but contributing to things that I think improve the human condition elsewhere. It's awesome. And I get a dopamine. I'm not doing this because I'm just a blank check here. I'm doing this because it gives me two things. Pleasure, that I know that I'm improving other people's lives, hopefully your own. And it also improves myself as a person and gives me my dopamine rush once in a while. So that's it. I mean, I'm sorry there's no spiritual answer to the purpose of life of serving God. By the way, does anybody know what you do in heaven? It's in John 16:32.
Never read it, but I believe you just praise God all
That's correct. You have a little song, you can say it or sing it, and that's what you do 24/7 for the billions and billions and billions of years. Sorry, I'd rather go to hell and have a great conversation, intellectual conversation, with all of the guys that do not believe in God. You know, I don't believe in either one, by the way, so it doesn't bother me.
Well, if you went to hell, then you'd suffer pain and torture for the rest of your life.
If there is a hell, that's correct.
So you
I just don't worry about
have
it.
a chance to have an intellectual conversation.
Well, maybe not.
Disagreement while you-
Maybe not. If one believes in a hell, that's fine. I respect everybody's beliefs. There is no evidence of a hell. I think it's what's called a meme. M-E-M-E, a meme. Has anybody heard the meme thing before?
We have a different definition of it as teenagers.
This is Richard Dawkins. He's an evolutionist. He's an evolutionary scholar. He's a biologist. And he's like he's one of the main four horsemen. The four horsemen from the Bible is coming back from the apocalypse. Four horsemen
Oh, like,
comes back, and I mean, it's Muslims have it too, so it's not a new idea. They come back to wreak havoc on everything else. Say again?
Bring out Armageddon.
That's bring on Armageddon, right? He was one of the four. Three of them are still alive, and he coined the word meme. A meme is an idea that passes on, not a thing like biology, like a DNA. A meme is something like an idea that passes on from one generation to another and sometimes gets stronger. All religions are memes because they're an idea, sometimes without any evidence at all except for man-made thought writing things down. Maybe they have a holy text, but it's a meme, an idea that passes on. And it does not pass on genetically, by the way.
So there's not a God gene, you know, when they were
Well,
about the God gene?
Yeah, no, there is no God gene. You are predisposed by your parents to believe, or by your parents and by your upbringing, your indoctrination.
So would that be kind of like a meme?
No, because, well, it's a non-meme, because if you don't teach the meme, then there is no meme.
So it
You
has
see.
to be taught.
Yeah, a religion has to be taught. If you grew up in a society that has no religion, you would, like I first said, if you heard about any religion, you would think that they are totally bonkos. You know, it's just something that is grown up with us. However, there are certain physical aspects that are within our DNA that are, and I'm talking about the brain. When you learn about child psychology, when you discover a little more about dive into child psychology, which I did in my college years, you learn certain things, that certain behaviors that we have, like caring for someone else as we grow older, is a natural behavior. Just imagine two tribes, because we lived in tribes for probably 200,000 years or more, 50 people to 70 people, 10 miles away, enough to where we don't conflict with picking and gathering, no crops, hunter-gatherers. And this tribe cared about their children more than this tribe did. Which tribe do you think that actually were successful at surviving, this tribe. If you care for your children, you're more likely to survive. And some people think that if this tribe, two different tribes now, this tribe believed in a God, and this tribe didn't, if they ever came to war, that this tribe possibly might fight harder because they're getting a reward than this tribe. So some psychologists, they call it evolutionary psychologists, meaning that our psychology is evolutionary based, DNA based. Give you another example. You take a baby, put him here, and you put a plastic sheet, a plastic plexiglass right here that's clear, and you put checkerboards down there. So the baby crawling over here will see the checkerboards. They will not cross over. They have not been taught to not cross over a cliff, but they are biologically and evolutionarily trained to do that in their head at 6 months old. This is what a new thing that's coming out now, where we are predisposed to do a lot of shit. And one of them is to believe in what's called type 2, I forgot the name of it. If you're a parent and you have kids around and you're a hunter-gatherer, and there's this big swath of grass like in Africa, all of us came from Africa, and there is wind blowing in there, but it might be a tiger as well. You're going to take your kids away from that grass, right? You're going to say, stay away from the grass. It's a type 2 error. No? Okay. Those who say, okay, I'm not going to take my kids away, and if it is a type 2 error, there's type 1 and type 2, I'm not going to get into that. But if there is no saber-toothed tiger, which was alive right here in Orange County, by the way, 850 pounds with teeth that big, that would eat your kids for lunch in 5 bites. Bam! Gone. If there was no tiger there, you were safe, but you still keep your kids away from them. For those tribes who didn't have that particular behavior in them, they're gone. So within this biological system that we have of creating children, some of those psychological things are in us. Another experiment with 2 kids where it tested morality. A lot of people say you can't be moral without a religion. I say you can be more moral without a religion. Unless the religion is totally peaceful, like Buddhism. That's a pretty peaceful religion. Fine. Moral meaning that you're not going to work for a living. Buddhists don't work in certain sects in Japan and China. They just accept gifts. They do no work. I don't know, that seems to me a little immoral. But kids were shown, these were 6 to 8 month olds, puppets. This puppet over here would have a ball, and this puppet over here would come over and grab the ball and steal it away from this guy. I'm summarizing now. They would put the puppets on sticks, put them in front of the baby, and guess what happened? 80% of the babies took the ball that was in the middle of these 2 puppets and gave it to the one puppet that it was stolen from. We have morality built into us. 20% of the kids flicked off the bad puppet off the table. Awesome. You can see this on 60 Minutes. You can see it on YouTube. Monkeys have morality. Look up, here's another. Look up monkey morality on YouTube. Cool video. Because all the religionists say, monkeys and animals, they have no morals. Wrong. Monkeys and animals, they don't have sex with the same sex. Wrong. Every species of mammals have 3% homosexual behavior, especially giraffes for some odd reason. For life. I'm talking about for life. It's like, how do you produce? Well, there's enough other people, enough other giraffes to produce. So this is something about the scientific skepticism totally outside of atheism, but relates back to it. Because I know that we can have morals without religion. You don't need religion to have morals. You might feel more comfortable believing in a religion because they say something until you dive deep. The best way to examine if something is true is to find the opposite opinion, the opposite argument of it. And this is the last thing I'm going to say before I get into these questions. If you have an argument against a claim, and your argument is the same as other religionists, your argument is the same. Okay, why do you believe? I believe because there's a holy text. Okay, the argument is that there is a God because there's a holy text. If the same argument is made by another religion that's conflicting with your religion, which is about 30 major ones, about 1,000 little ones, your argument is invalid. You get it? And you're not talking about the claim, you're talking about the argument for the claim. If that argument is the same, because there's so many different claims, and some arguments for that claim could be similar with different claims. The argument, God did it, as an argument, right? That's called the incredulity or ignorance argument from ignorance. The logical fallacies is something that scientific skepticism and atheism has to do. It has to study, because when you study the fallacies, you know how to argue your point better. So look up on Wikipedia logical fallacies. There's informal and there's formal. Formal ones are the easiest ones to get at. An example would be a straw man argument or an ad hominem. Has anybody heard of ad hominem? It's Latin for against yourself or against a person, personally against a person. Let's just give an example. You hit that fellow over there, so you're a bad person and you can't be a good president. That's an ad hominem attack. Because you did something personally outside of something that has nothing to do with making you a good president. I'm talking about not president of the U.S., just president of any club that you have, right? That's called an ad hominem argument. And the biggest one that religionists have is the argument from ignorance. I don't know what happened, but something must have happened, therefore God. If you don't know, you can't make an argument. The best thing to do is go, I just don't know the answer to that. So, here we go. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to answer one, and I'm going to open it to the crowd for other answers. A question. Is that all right? All right? Okay. Have there been any evil acts done in the name of no? Of course. Political acts. Political acts are responsible for the most deaths of humans in the existence of humanity. Religion is number two. It's not really great to be number two among all of the reasons for killing other people. How many people did God kill in the Bible? Did anybody know? Actually, some priest in the 3rd, 4th century.
At least several cities.
Right?
Didn't he wipe out the entire earth? That one's just to
Twice, actually.
Twice.
Yeah, world and sometime else, I think. I've been told that. I have to research that a little bit more. 286,000 God killed. That's in the Bible. He killed this one crew that was people that were actually worshipers that were taking the ark across the desert to hide it away from Israel. Totally fictional, probably. But it was so bumpy that the lid fell off, and the guys reached up to put the lid back on and saw the inside of the ark, whatever was there. God not only killed those 5 guys, but he killed 50,000 people in the next city. First of all, there was no city in 50,000 next to her in that area. But just the idea of killing something that you're killing your most loved believers, right? How many people did people kill believing in God? It's more than 286,000. It's 1.8 million.
Crusades and everything.
Yeah, everything. Yeah, crusades up to present day. 1.8 million. So that leaves about 250 million people that, in the name of this one religion alone, right, were killed. I'm reading a book called Better Angels of Our Nature, and it's about how we live. This will make you, of all of this bad shit that I'm giving you right now, here's something that will make you feel better. This guy, Steven Pinker, he's a linguist. Oddly enough, he's versed in a lot of other studies as well. He studied the study of religion, study of violence up until today. We are living, this is categorically true under all studies that are out right now. We live in the best time right now of human history because we have better medicine, we have better science, we have better politics. More states around the world, what I mean by that is countries, are becoming more democratic. They're sharing economic resources with one another, less likely to be war. Even with the Syrian war out there, which is really nothing compared to what was in Vietnam and World War II and I and Korea. Even if you take that whole century, it's nothing compared to the people that died before that on a per capita basis, meaning that if there's only 2 million people in the world and you kill 200,000, you've just killed 10% of the world's population. So it's per capita meaning a percentage, right? Throughout the last 8-9 centuries, we've been getting better and better and better. We live longer now, we live healthier now, we be freer now, we be more democratic now. This is an awesome time to live compared to any time in human history. So if you think you got it bad, fuck you. Because you don't, man. You don't. If you had a bad, the average age of the human was 48 up until just 100 years ago when science started making science discoveries. So you had to have 5 kids to have the status quo of 2 kids living. That's for the entire humanity of before you were humans, before you were Homo sapiens. It was even worse. So we live in a pretty awesome time, right? I mean, it's good to know that, because if you think you're living in a shitty time, no, we live in a great time. One more question. One more question here.
Do you have examples from that first question?
What, the first question?
Yeah. Could you
Oh yeah, just look up Wikipedia, atheists that have killed people. But you have to count the socio-political act as well. Stalin was an atheist, but he killed not because of atheism. In fact, it's very difficult. I haven't found an atheist political leader raising up an atheist flag and saying, let's kill those believers over there. It's always believers against believers. In the entire history of atheism, I can't find one atheistic leader killing other people. I'm sure it's happened. It might not just be written in history, you know. So that's another reason I think atheists are killed most of the time. It says almost in every religious text document, kill the unbeliever, which is kind of weird. It says to even kill your own son and your daughter in the Bible. I mean, it's all that stuff. How do atheists develop a moral code? Well, it's built into us, but we are actually more moral than any religion except Buddhism. And the statistics for that comes from prisons. Because where do bad people go? They go to prison. What? Well, same thing. Jail or prison, yeah. Okay. But if you measure the amount, this is again per capita, meaning per population. You can't have like 10 people in prison and call it 50% if there's 20 people living in that religion, right? So it's per capita. Atheists are 20 times less likely to end up in prison than Christians are. And even if you take a whole order of magnitude, it's still twice. Yes?
Could that just be simply because we're the minority?
That, per capita, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And the reason for that is because when you're an atheist, you kind of figure things out. You just don't do bad things as much. You have a better moral code than you do if you're a believer. In fact, a lot of believers will do things in the name of their religion that is immoral. Andrea Gates killed 5 kids about 15, 20 years ago. 4 kids, because she thought that God was telling her that these kids have to be killed. And it says so, you know, in the first chapter, Abraham was ordered by God to kill. Of course, an angel came down and said, nope, sorry, we're just joking. But suppose that Andrea Gates actually did hear God. Now, there's 2 problems here. Suppose that she knew that these guys would be the next Hitlers and destroy America, right? She would be actually moral to kill these kids. If she knew, absolutely, for some hypothetical reason, that these kids were evil. She'd go to jail for it. You might even get the gas chamber for it. But in her mind, it was right. What's the difference between God telling you to do something bad? If you believe that God is telling you to do something bad, you can't question it. I ask this for a lot of Christians. Oh, I look at the Bible and see, no, sorry, you don't have to go that far. If God is telling you something, that's the Almighty, creator of the universe, telling you to do something, and if you believe that you're going to go directly to hell when you die if you don't do what he says, this is a problem. Because if there is a God, he might have a moral reason. And you have to do something bad. But no, you're not going to do something bad. Most people don't do something bad because God tells them to do something bad. They're just delusional. So, you had a question?
Yes.
What was it?
You know, if I can't get any information from friends or family, a place, a physical thing, internet site, YouTube channel, or maybe a museum, where would an atheist go best? Just an example or 2.
Well, the first thing to do if you're a student is to look up the Student Secular Alliance, SSA. Secular Students Alliance, I believe. Just put in those words, and you'll find that almost every college has a Secular Student Alliance. And also go to Meetup, atheism.com. This is all free stuff. And look up atheism or humanism. Sometimes you can find a little more intellectual church-state separation, because you can be a Christian and still believe in church-state separation. Church-state separation is a very important issue, especially in these times with our current political leaders, shoving religious ideas down our throat, and eliminating some of the rights that we have as atheists. For instance, public parks. You're not allowed to put an atheist symbol in a public park. Same thing with any religion. You can't put a church in a public park. You can't put a Ten Commandments or a cross or a Buddhist symbol. It's public. It's for everyone. Well, those are starting to erode now, where we are being discriminated against. Same thing with taxes. Churches get free taxes. I have a 501c3. I have to pay my taxes. I don't get housing allowances like church members do. If you were a basketball coach at Irvine High School over here in Anaheim, that's a religious school, one of the first schools to actually produce the sex scandals for kids 20 years ago. If you were a basketball coach and you said God bless you to a student, you are now a minister in that church, and you can get $1,000 a month housing allowance. Really? Don't do that. This is something that religious privileges have. Every 15 years on average, Congress throws in this thing, oh, the churches are great, so we got to give them a break. If churches were equal, it's up to God to get the money to produce these churches, not for people to give the tax-free money to the church. All these other 501c3 organizations out there don't have that privilege. So this is called religious privilege. If you were a baker, this is actually, I think it's come up just last week, and we were anti-gay, and two gay guys came up, one of which was one of your good friends, and you didn't care about the gay stuff, but now he's getting married, and he asked you, a good friend, to make his cake for him with two men on the top. And you were a staunch Christian, you say, I'm sorry, I can't serve you. You don't have any problem with that initially unless you know about the laws. You can't refuse any service because of religious belief, bad or good or against you. You can't serve service from blacks. If a guy in a Hindu in a turban came in, you couldn't say, I'm sorry, I don't serve guys with turbans or any Islamophobes or any Islamic people. You would be the Islamophobe. You can't do that in America in restaurants or bakeries. You can't do it. It's illegal. And if you started to do it, everyone would have a choice to ex-nay something, right there, ex-nay a particular client that walked through that door the next time because of religious privilege. This is being eroded away right now in America, and there are organizations that are fighting up against that.
So, like, what do you mean by, like, the gay thing?
But with the cake,
What do you mean by that? Like,
the gays, they had their lovers of the same sex go into a bakery shop and they want a birthday cake or a wedding cake, and he's anti-gay, so he says, I'm sorry, I respect your views, but I'm not going to make your cake.
are atheists anti-gay, or do they just not care?
That's a non sequitur. It's meaning one doesn't mean have any relevance to the other. There are some gays that are pro-gay. Most are, because most atheists are progressive and liberal. There are some conservative atheists out there that have conservative values. But I'd say, just guessing, this is totally anecdotal, 70-80% of atheists are progressive, meaning that they want to move on. Progressiveness means that you're on the side of history. If you don't believe in interracial marriage, you're not progressive. That was against the law up until 1948, and South Carolina kept that on the books until 1967, even though they didn't enforce it. And there's almost 40 states now have, you cannot be a congregational leader in our state if you're an atheist. It's still on the books. They can't enforce it, but they leave it there because they think they're more Christian. So the answer to your question is, most of them are pro-progressive.
You can't get tax exempt for, say, that you need an atheist church or atheist building where you all gather.
That's been done, and that's actually been true. There's a Church of Bacon in Las Vegas. Really?
Church of.
Bacon. Bacon?
Oh.
Love bacon, right? That comes off a whole nother thing. Another thing that atheists have is that kind of is a side note is that we're Pastafarians, because this guy made the Northern California. He made the flying spaghetti monster. Everybody heard about that?
Oh, yeah.
That is, if you see, I have one on the back of my car. It's a flying spaghetti monster. It has little noodles coming out with 2 eyeballs on top, and that's kind of like the secret code of atheism. If you have a T-shirt that says "Flying Spaghetti Monster" and just go everywhere, you know, grocery stores, and you just people say, "Hey, right on, I'm one of you." Secret handshake, you know.
Are they believe in the flying teapot around the sun?
Well, that's Russell's philosophical. That's the argument from ignorance. You might believe there's a teapot, and it's around Saturn, by the way, Saturn's moon, I think. So that was Russell's was an atheist, and he was a very good writer as well. What do you believe happens after death? We already talked about that. How do you believe the world was created totally naturally? With has anybody ever heard "we are stardust"? That phrase.
No.
Why do you think that we are stardust? Any ideas? Not you. Why are we stardust? Stardust meaning we are elements from other stars.
I don't know for sure, but I have ideas. A star explodes, doesn't it form physicalities out of?
New elements?
Yeah.
Yeah. That was it? Yeah.
Radioactive decay.
At the beginning of the universe, there was hydrogen and about 2% helium. That was it. For 280 million years, there was total darkness. Nothing. And then the first stars started to form just from these atoms out there coalescing. It took them that long, nearly 300 million years to coalesce, condense so much to where they actually had made an atomic explosion from the pressure. And that created a star. All these stars were very young stars. They're not like our star, which is a 20 billion year old star. Right now we have about 14 billion years on the star, so we have 5 billion left. These stars usually exploded in less than 500 million years. But when they exploded, they produced new chemicals. First, they just produced oxygen, a little bit of oxygen, a little bit of carbon, and they coalesced again, made a new star. Kaboom! More chemicals, more atoms, elements, different, more complex elements with more neutrons, more protons, getting now further down the periodic table. Finally, uranium, cobalt, all these different very heavy elements, 238 neutrons in an uranium atom. So everything that we see, are, feel, touch, breathe, came from stars. The oxygen that we're breathing right now came from stars. We will be dead in 5 billion years, and our sun will blow up along with us. And the stars and the molecules and chemicals in us and atoms will come and form new stars. So we do have an afterlife. It's just the natural, where we are going to become new stars. Now, I'm not going to be there, but I know it's going to happen. So I think that's pretty cool. The idea that, yes, we do have an afterlife. It's just not going to be a thought exercise of, you know, so that's, I believe the world was created. And the history of this stuff, if you're into wonderment, if you're into curiosity about how these things happened, just look up YouTube. How did the universe was created? It is totally awesome to the people that are interested in how things happened to be the way they are right now. I mean, started, you know, a long time ago, went here, then went here, went here. We started forming solar systems. The beautiful thing is, there's nothing in here that says, is there life out there? Is there life in the universe? Are there other humans, other aliens, even just a planet with bacteria and algae? By the way, this planet was all carbon dioxide, and it was algae that made the oxygen from the carbon dioxide. So for 2 billion years, there was no life except algae and bacteria. I think that there are millions, maybe tens of millions of intelligent life forms out there. And it's not like this intelligent life form that we have right now. Look at us 10 billion years more advanced, even 10 million years more advanced. That's out there right now. And they're probably listening to us right now, but so far our radio waves have only gone out about 60 light years from, imagine them finally finding the Earth and getting a TV program and deciphering how the lines go across the tube. And there's I Love Lucy. Or Hitler in his parade, right? Well, not a playback of Hitler, I would say. So we only have a range of 60 light years away, which is really close, considering it's, billions and billions, hundreds of billions of, 13 billion light years away on each end. So I believe there's lots of life forms out there. We're probably never going to find one, because the closest one is like 14 million light years away. The closest star is 2 million light years away. It's a long ways away. We're not going to get off this planet unless we go to another solar system within our galaxy. And anyway, I'll move on. Sorry about that. Heaven and hell, we already talked about that. Do some atheists wish they could believe in God? I see two different types of atheists generally. There is a apatheist atheist, meaning I just don't care. There might be a God, but yeah, okay, I'm an atheist, and there's an educated atheist. One that finds reasons to believe in atheism. They start on the whole thing about religion seems like crap. If I start getting away from all these, I start becoming an educated atheist. So that's two different areas, and of course everything in between. So those who were apathetic atheists, sure, they might wish they could believe in a God, but they just don't have the reasons or the gumption to decide one way. The inevitable procrastinist.
Are they, do you think, ashamed sometimes or afraid to say that, to talk about it with people?
Atheism? Oh yeah, especially in the South. We're progressive on the coast, but the South, are you from the South?
No, I know where you're going.
Yeah, the South, you cannot say you're an atheist in the South. There has been underage teenagers kicked out of the house, and the locks changed because they were atheists. This is the harm in religion. Religion says love, and then Jesus, it says, leave your family and join me. What? My wife would kill me if I left my family and joined some sect, So it depends where you live, and this is why atheism is growing in America. We're growing by about 1% every year. Right now, there's 25% of everybody that they don't call it atheism, they call it, are you religious at all? And 24% of Americans check that off, mostly on the East and West Coast. Oddly enough, 40% of people between 18 and 30 check that off. And those numbers are rising. So this is where the politicians have to listen.
We can check off when they ask the question,
Are you religious?
if you're not religious.
Yes, are you religious? Or are you no religion?
No religion.
They might be spiritual.
But it's 18%, you say?
24 to 25% of all Americans, 40% of 18 to 30-year-olds. So welcome to the club, guys. You're like 40% there. Morals, do you believe in evolution? Yes, I do. What do you think proves it to be true? Okay. I went to a creationist conference. These are people that bring PhDs on stage. It says, here's the reason why the earth was created in 6,000 years. First of all, I find it very dishonest for somebody to get a bachelor's, a master's, and a PhD lying on the test personally, just to find himself getting a PhD. Because every school you go to in America, you'll have to lie on the test, because you're just going to take down the things that you know or that you get from the class and write it down, even though you don't believe any of it. This is very dishonest. Any creationist that's a PhD is a dishonest person. If that person up there, Calvary Chapel is a creationist church. I used to go down there when I was your age. It was not a church, it was a church that was a tent, and they had the awesomest concerts, and I was a musician. And it didn't matter if they were singing God or not, they were the cutest looking chicks there, and there was a great band to listen to, so we went, my best friend and I. And now it's all over the world, like 200, 400, 4,000, I don't know, a lot of churches. That PhD candidate that was up on that conference, I'm imagining 200 other scientists behind him, and that's the percentage. 0.5% of scientists are creationists. Less if you look at just the earth sciences, meaning geologists, anthropologists, all those things that actually study rocks, paleontologists, bones. That's why I believe. I trust the majority of the scientists. In any field, by the way. You don't need to be a scientist to believe in this stuff. If all the scientists say that vaccines don't work, vaccines don't cause autism, you don't have the time to become a scientist or a doctor. You have to trust provincially, which means temporarily, you have to trust the people who study this thing full time in any subject. If you go to a doctor and say, this pill will has a 2% chance of curing your disease, but some people really believe it does. This pill has a 98% chance of curing your disease. Because why? We've given this to thousands of people and surveyed everybody. Which one would you choose? And there is what's called cognitive dissonance, meaning holding two different ideas in your head that conflict with each other. One of them is, I believe in science, I believe in doctors, I believe in the scientific method, and this other PhD guy at a young creationist conference says that he disagrees with all of this stuff I believe in. See, there's a cognitive dissonance there. And they use their confirmation bias and the reward of heaven to say, I believe this guy. But I still believe airplanes are safe. By the way, you have to travel 120 million miles, 24 hours a day to get in an accident. And that accident will prove 90% survivable. So don't be afraid of airplanes. That's the statistics behind it. Any other question? I'm sorry?
There's a good reason. I mean,
Good reason for?
being afraid of airplanes. I mean,
Oh, I'm not talking about being afraid. There's a good reason for that. Yes, I agree with you.
Like the 405 accident, my dad was 20 seconds behind the thing, and if he was 20 seconds ahead, he wouldn't be here.
That's anecdotal evidence. You don't know the truth by anecdotal evidence. It might scare you, and it probably should. But the decision to go on an airplane simply because somebody else close to you might have been in an accident is no reason not to go on an airplane. In fact, you're much more likely, you're 200 times more likely to get killed right outside in an automobile accident than you are on an airplane. Now, that doesn't mean I'm not going to force you to go on an airplane. You're just going to have to spend a lot of money on gas. That's fine. Okay. That's cool. What happens if atheists kill someone? The same thing that happens when a Christian kills somebody. They just go to jail.
I think maybe they were thinking, do they go to hell?
Oh, yeah. Have all atheists always been persecuted? Pretty much. Less now because it's growing to be a cool thing. You know, it's also on the side of history, meaning that if you look at gayness in high schools now, it's not a big thing. You're gay, okay, so what, right? 10 years ago, might have been a big thing. 20 years ago, you're gay, stay away from you. You have 1 or 2 friends in school for the 3 years that you're in high school, right? Now an atheist is,
Short time ago,
yeah.
when you think about it.
Yeah, it is, yeah. Same with interracial marriage, it's not a big
Right.
deal, you know. What does religion mean to you? Well, that's the best one yet. Who said that one? Yeah. By the way, you don't need to be here. You know.
So let's take some time now. Would anybody like to go back to class? And if not, you could stay here and ask more questions.
Is that the right time? So we've been here an hour and 20 minutes then?
Anybody like to ask more questions? Ian,
No questions?
Kelly, any more questions?
I'd like to ask one question.
You're right. Ian, I asked you if you have any more questions. Okay.
I have a question.
Oh,
Did this talk that I gave you, how did that affect you? Are you more interested in non-belief, or are you neutral to it still?
I was already an atheist, however, I just believed in science. That was, and now I'm interested to continue more study on everything about it.
Good.
Well, I've already, and in complete agreement to everything you just that it's, in fact, it's even strengthening my own belief in no faith.
Not faith.
And actually plan to make this my career as well, to argue against this type of nonsense.
Don't be a philosopher. You can't get a job
I'll
except
study
your.
journalism.
Unless you're. Oh, that's even cooler. Yeah. A lot of journalists are on the progressive side, and they want to know the truth too. So that's among society, it's very difficult to know the truth if you get different conflicting versions of it. But
What did you, Isaac? How did you, do you feel differently now? Do you think differently or the same? So after listening to this, do you think differently or the same or what?
I don't know.
Did you find it interesting?
Yeah.
all right.
How
Well,
about
thanks.
you, Callie? Well, I'd like to kind of hear from somebody. What do you think? Did it make you think differently or the same or what?
It's still neutral. It's still exactly the same as when I had walked in.
And so you feel the same way?
Food for thought.
Dee Dee?
What was the question?
Do you think differently, the same, or do you find it interesting? What do you think?
It's the same. I didn't really learn anything different.
Okay. Well, I hope you heard something new. Some new thoughts? No? Okay. Wow. I thought I was kind of putting some new ones. Well,
I learned stuff new, but my beliefs stayed the same.
okay. That's cool. At least you know the reasons why other people believe the way they do. And this is the self-discovery, which I think is very healthy for all individuals, to find out what people believe and why they believe it. And it makes you accept them more. If you were anti-atheist and you heard this speech, maybe you would be less anti-atheist because there's reasons behind it. It's not just rejecting God, it's rejecting a negative, meaning the whole philosophy of religion, to me, is a negative.
What I wonder about is sometimes you'll see in a family, maybe a religious family, one person becoming I wonder if there's something about somebody's brain, sorry that's my, I know, I'm sorry. Is there something about some brains that make it easier?
Are people predisposed to be a believer or not?
Right.
What did I say at the very beginning when I was 12 years old? With
Yes.
no influence at all, my brain was telling me that this religion stuff is silly. So yes.
Right.
Can
So
you
you think some
imagine
people
being in a
are.
religious family?
Hmm?
Can you imagine being in a religious
My
family?
dad was a minister.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Are you an atheist?
I was like you at 12.
Just curious?
Yeah, I didn't really.
That's right.
go for it.
Yeah. You can't
I
find
also
questions,
noticed with
answers
that-
out at 12.
People, this was during the time when blacks were separated from whites, even though it wasn't supposed to be. And he was trying to get black kids to be able to go to our Bible school, and the congregation had it.
Oh, wow.
So I saw that those experiences too made me think, not only does it make it difficult to believe, but it kind of means something.